The red keep stood solemn against a gray sky, its ramparts of pale stone and red banners looming over a courtyard humming with anxious energy. Word had spread through King's Landing like wildfire. King Robert Baratheon was dead. The populace mourned in their own way, some with honest grief for the boisterous ruler who had once united the realm under his hammer, others with practical fear at the vacuum left behind. Everywhere in the capital, there was an air of expectancy, as though the city itself waited on the precipice of a great change. Yet in the halls of power, the shock was more profound, layered with suspicion and secrets. Men stood watchful in corridors, small groups whispered in half-lit corners, and every step seemed to echo with unspoken questions. Eddard Stark was not by Robert's side when the king drew his final breath, a fact that gnawed at him with silent guilt. He had tried to keep his friend safe, had pleaded with him to be prudent in his hunts, to mind the dangers that lurked not only in the woods but also in the very halls where he was meant to rule. Yet Robert had gone hunting with his squire, Lancel, and the Lannister influence that coursed through that boy's veins could not be ignored. The boar had gutted Robert. Even on his deathbed, the king had laughed about the folly of it all, smelling of wine and regrets. In the gloom of the Red Keep Solar, Ned found himself pacing the length of the stone floor. Outside, the wind whistled, carrying the smell of distant sea salt and the stench of the city's poorer quarters. Within the chamber, Peter Baelish stood, hands folded behind his back, a faint smirk on his lips. Usually, that smirk made Ned bristle with mistrust, for he had long suspected that Littlefinger's cunning was matched only by his ambition. Yet today, there was no insolence in Peter's posture. Instead, a certain sincerity lingered there. Ned was still reeling from Robert's last command, spoken in a faint, slurred voice, that Ned should serve as protector of the realm until Joffrey came of age. The words might have been lawful in spirit, but Eddard suspected the boy Joffrey was not Robert's true son. Ned had uncovered proof that the Lannisters had spun a grand deception, that Cersei's children were born of her incestuous relationship with her twin brother, Jaime. In the days before Robert's death, Eddard had confronted her with his suspicions. Yet instead of acting rashly, he had sought to do the honorable thing, give her a chance to leave and avoid bloodshed. Ned's sense of honor had cost him dearly, especially once he realized she might have acted faster than he had anticipated. But now, with Robert gone, the city balanced on the edge of chaos. The question that loomed was how to proceed. In a turn of events Ned himself would never have predicted, Littlefinger had come with a private confession. He claimed to have orchestrated quiet negotiations with Lord Renly Baratheon. He claimed also to have dissuaded the Gold Cloaks from selling their loyalty to the Lannisters. There, in the lamplight, Peter's eyes glinted with calculated cunning, but for once that cunning seemed directed in Ned's favor. "My Lord Stark," said Peter, his voice low and measured, "I do hope you'll understand I only arranged what I could to preserve the peace." Ned halted by the window, looking out over the courtyard. Below, he saw the ranks of the City Watch Gold Cloaks, still posted but noticeably less fidgety than when he had last looked. They had not yet declared for Joffrey. Instead, they seemed to be awaiting instructions, as though something or someone had stayed their hand. Eddard turned back to Peter, the memory of betrayal still fresh in his mind. He had been so close to drawing steel in that throne room not a day earlier. It was Baelish who had whispered in his ear to trust him, but in the true version of events. Ned recalled how it ended in the show of force from the Gold Cloaks that had spelled his downfall. Yet that was a path untraveled now. Had the cunning coinmaster chosen a different route? Ned took a breath, steeling himself. "You say you convinced Renly to remain in the capital? That you convinced the City Watch not to take the Lannisters' gold?" Littlefinger inclined his head. "Yes, Lord Stark, though I would not be so bold as to say it was solely my doing. I simply pointed out where advantages might lie. Lord Renly sees an opportunity to press his claim, or, at least, to ensure that his nephew does not seize power unchallenged." "Does he call Joffrey his nephew?" Ned asked, unable to keep the grim curve from his lips. He expected Peter to smirk, but the man's face remained composed. "That depends on who's listening," Peter replied lightly. He's not one to publicly question the succession, not yet, at least. But privately, he's open to hearing other truths. He is a practical man, if ambitious. Ned's mind turned over the implications. Renly did not have the best claim by birthright. Stannis was the elder brother, but distant, and with no friends in King's Landing. Yet Renly had the charismatic advantage, the looks, and a willingness to use subterfuge if he deemed it necessary. Would he be a better protector of Robert's legacy than the boy on the throne, who might not even be Robert's? The only thing certain was that neither Renly nor Stannis would stand aside for an obvious falsehood if the truth were made plain. And the gold cloaks? Ned pressed. You truly have them loyal to me? Peter waved his hand dismissively, as though to suggest that gold, not loyalty, was the key. The coin you've secured for them is more plentiful than the coin the Queen can offer. Besides, Janos Slynt is a man of comfort. He knows you are not reckless. You would see him remain in command if he cooperates. Yes? Ned hesitated. He did not like Janos Slynt, a creature who bent whichever way the wind blew. But if the City Watch was on Ned's side, there might be a bloodless path to settle the matter of succession. The Northman in him wanted to deal with everything plainly, to name the Lannister children for the false heirs they were. But Ned knew well enough that the game in King's Landing was never so straightforward. He sighed. Very well, Peter. For the time being, I'll accept your word that the City Watch remains with us. But you must know I won't allow more duplicity. Peter's lips twitched with the ghost of a smile. Of course, Lord Stark. I am merely a humble servant of the realm. With that, he stepped aside to reveal another figure lurking in the shadows. It was Renly Baratheon himself, handsome in a green velvet doublet embroidered with golden stags. His dark hair was brushed back from a face too young to look so grave. He stepped forward, extending his hand in a gesture of respect. Ned hesitated, then clasped the offered hand. Renly's grip was firm. Lord Stark, Renly said, I regret that we meet again under such dire circumstances. My brother's death was unexpected. Ned inclined his head. He was my friend. It's a heavy blow. Renly's eyes flickered with a sadness that might have been genuine, though Ned struggled to believe anything in King's Landing was free of guile. Your friendship with Robert is known throughout the 7 kingdoms, Renly said softly. Then he drew a breath. I have no wish to dishonor his memory, but I fear that if we do not move decisively, the Lannisters will seize control. My brother Stannis, well, you know how he is. He's rightful heir by all the laws of gods and men, but he's no friend to the small folk or to half the realm's lords. He's not a man to inspire devotion, Ned agreed, though he said it quietly. It was not a condemnation of Stannis's character. Stannis had iron integrity, but it was true that the man lacked the warmth or charm to unify the realm swiftly. Renly studied Ned's face. We both know Joffrey is not a Baratheon, but if you declare that, if you show the letters and prove his parentage is false, what then? Stannis becomes king, or at least we attempt to name him so. But how many men will follow him? How many fear a wrathful man with no gift for forgiveness? How many lords might cast their lot with the Lannisters if it seems the safer course? Ned felt a weight in his chest. This was precisely the conversation he had dreaded, the talk of expediency over truth. We must do what's right. If Joffrey is not Robert's son, the Iron Throne is not his by law. And do we want a war if the truth isn't enough to unify the realm? Renly countered. I offer a different path. The lords love me. Perhaps they loved Robert more, but I share his charm. With me as king, and you as protector of the realm until we've brought stability. Ned's voice hardened. I will not shatter the lawful order. Stannis is older and rightful. Renly exhaled, shaking his head. You honor-bound fool. Do you honestly believe the realm will accept Stannis so easily? There will be war either way, and at least with me there's a chance to prevent it from turning into a bloodbath. Still, you have the gold cloaks on your side for now, and I have no wish to see any Baratheon blood undone. We can bide our time, gather those loyal to the truth. Perhaps we must convene an inquest, a council. something to lay the evidence bare. At that, Littlefinger interjected with a mild cough. I have suggested to Lord Stark the idea of inviting all the wardens, except for Tywin, to King's Landing under a pretense of a royal inquisition, he said softly. A gathering that will force the hand of the Lannisters without giving them free rein to capture the capital. If the lords come and see the evidence, or at least sense the realm's mood, the Lannisters might lose the advantage of secrecy and intimidation. Renly nodded, considering. Highgarden would come if invited. My future good brother Marjorie and her father are always looking for advantage. The Vale might be reluctant, but Lisa cannot ignore a summons if the cause seems righteous. Dorne is a wild card, and you, Ned, as Warden of the North, you will be here. Eddard listened, feeling the cold truth settle on him. So this was the plan. A royal inquisition in King's Landing to sift through the Lannister plot. Tywin would undoubtedly refuse to attend. In his place, perhaps he might send Tyrion or none at all. But in Tywin's absence, the other great lords could be made to see reason. It was an audacious move, like drawing the realm's entire attention to a single point in the hope of unveiling truth in the brightest of lights. There were so many ways it could fail, resulting in violence, but perhaps it was better than letting the Lannisters entrench themselves behind the Boy King. Ned felt the ache of Robert's passing once again. If only the king had lived long enough to set things right. But the gods, it seemed, had a different path in mind. So Ned gritted his teeth and offered a solemn nod. We will do this carefully, he said. First, we ensure the city watch remains loyal. Then we send out ravens to every great lord, summoning them to the capital for a just hearing on the question of succession. If the evidence is known, the truth cannot be ignored. Renly's face brightened, though cautious optimism clouded his eyes. I will give you my support, Lord Stark. In time, we can find a path that serves the realm. Peter inclined his head with mock humility. The realm, indeed. That same evening, the small council met in a chamber warmed by a crackling fire. Varys hovered near the flickering torches, wearing that curious half-smile that suggested he knew far more than he let on. Grand Maester Pycelle dozed in his seat, roused only occasionally by the mention of important matters. Baelish spoke in hushed tones with Ned regarding the distribution of coins to keep the city watch satisfied. Renly took a seat at the far end of the table, drumming his fingers as he awaited official business. Absent from the council were Cersei and her children, who had retreated behind the towering walls of Maegor's Holdfast, presumably out of wariness. As the meeting commenced, Ned found himself addressing the council with the authority Robert had given him. By the king's own decree, I serve as protector of the realm until Prince Joffrey's majority. His grace passed not a day ago, and yet we must ensure order. The question of succession weighs heavily on us. Renly said lightly, Should we not first declare a period of mourning for our late king? Yes, Ned replied. We will do so, but the governance of the realm cannot pause, not when matters are so pressing. We propose a formal hearing, a royal inquisition, to be held here in King's Landing. We will summon the wardens and the great lords, excluding Tywin Lannister for reasons of impartiality, perhaps. The realm must see that truth is pursued fairly. Varys spoke up, his voice soft as spider's silk. A wise course, my lord. Yet do you not fear that Lord Tywin will take offense? He remains Warden of the West, despite his son's captivity or circumstances. The Lannisters hold much power. If they sense we are singling them out, might they not respond with aggression? Ned glanced at Peter, who offered only an inscrutable shrug. If Lord Tywin wishes to attend, we cannot stop him, Ned conceded. But we will not extend a personal invitation to him. The realm knows his partiality in matters relating to the crown. Let him send a representative if he wishes. Renly cleared his throat. We must also consider that Stannis is the rightful heir if... He paused, flicking his eyes toward Grand Maester Pycelle. The old man was blinking rapidly, as though half asleep. Renly simply finished, if circumstances align. He should be given the chance to speak as well. Varys nodded smoothly. Then we will have Prince Stannis, Prince Renly, and Prince Joffrey's parties all present. It will be quite the gathering of Baratheons. One might say half the realm is about to converge on King's Landing. Ned gave a curt nod. Yes, and I intend to see it done with as little bloodshed as possible. Ser Barristan Selmy, I trust, will keep the Kingsguard in line. His eyes traveled to the white-cloaked knight standing guard by the wall. Ser Barristan inclined his head, age and dignity etched upon his stern features. I am always loyal to the crown, Ser Barristan said gravely. His eyes flicked to Ned, measuring the meaning behind the words. May the gods grant that the rightful ruler ascend the throne. With that, the plan took shape. Ravens were penned and sent across the land. The news of Robert's death was accompanied by a formal request that the great lords travel to King's Landing for a hearing of utmost importance. Careful language was employed, one that neither openly accused the Lannisters nor declared Joffrey illegitimate. Nonetheless, the implication rippled across the Seven Kingdoms. A storm was gathering, and the capital was the Eye. Days passed in anxious preparation. King's Landing was both hushed and volatile at once. The gold cloaks, bolstered by a fresh infusion of coin from the crown's coffers, under Peter's discreet management, held the city in a firm grip. Those who might have stirred up unrest found themselves under the watchful eye of the city watch. Rumors swirled about the queen and her children. Some said Cersei was preparing an escape by sea, others that she was forging alliances with any lord who would listen. But no open hostilities erupted, largely because both sides, House Stark and the Lannisters, recognized that the moment to strike had not yet arrived. Within the Red Keep, Cersei's presence was all but absent. She remained behind locked doors with Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen, seldom sending out more than the occasional summons to her advisors. On the second day following Robert's death, she did appear briefly in the throne room to proclaim that Joffrey was the rightful king of the Undulls, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms. Yet with the city watch standing coolly behind Eddard Stark, and Renly at Ned's side, Cersei found her grand proclamation fell on uneasy ears. The usual fanfare was missing, and no mass cheering met her words. The silence was heavy, broken only by Cersei's hollow declarations and Joffrey's uncertain glances. Meanwhile, Ned Stark convened quietly with Renly in the Tower of the Hand. They plotted how best to handle the arrival of the other wardens and prominent lords. The north was Ned's domain, but he did not expect to see a large retinue arrive soon. There was distance to traverse, and Robb Stark was just a boy in Winterfell, though growing into a man of his own. The Vale was still in the hands of Lysa Arryn, an unpredictable woman who seldom left the Eyrie. The Reach was likely to send Mace Tyrell, a man who yearned for grand weddings and prestigious alliances. Dorne remained a wild card, wounded by old grievances against the Lannisters and Baratheons alike. Only the Stormlands might prove unequivocally loyal to House Baratheon, but whether to Renly or Stannis remained unknown. As the days wore on, scouts and travelers began arriving at the city's gates, bearing sigils of various houses. The hustle in the streets grew, inns filled to bursting, and the smell of sweat and horses rose in the humid King's Landing air. New alliances formed overnight in the wine sinks, while old rivalries smoldered. Through it all, Ned maintained his stern dignity, rarely leaving the Red Keep. He was the protector of the realm in name, though he felt the weight of that title on his shoulders, uncertain how long it would last. Finally, nearly a fortnight after Robert's death, the first wave of High Lords arrived in earnest. Mace Tyrell swept in through the city gates with a procession that stretched for half a mile. Knights in gilded armor, banners of green and gold rose sigils, and ladies in lavish gowns. Olenna Tyrell, the Queen of Thorns, had not accompanied him, but word had it she remained in Highgarden, content to pull strings from afar. Still, Mace arrived in pomp, swaggering into the Red Keep's throne room to pay respect to the new king, as he loudly called Joffrey. Yet when Ned greeted him in his capacity as protector, Mace offered flowery compliments that skirted treason, obviously hedging his bets. Tyrell, Ned realized, was waiting to see which way the wind blew. Not far behind came riders from the Vale. Lysa Arryn herself did not come, but her brother's bannermen carried her word. Some rumored that the boy Robert Arryn was too fragile for such a journey. Others said Lisa simply wanted no part in the coming fray. Regardless, there was a presence of the Falcon banners perched on the gates, as representatives of the Vale took lodging in the city. Littlefinger feigned disinterest, though Ned suspected he was in contact with them, sowing secrets as he always did. Then came Prince Doran Martell's envoys from Dorne, dark-eyed, proud men bearing the sun and spear sigil. They did not come in large numbers, but their presence was striking, almost regal, for they carried themselves with quiet dignity. Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper himself, was not among them, yet there was tension enough in the air whenever Dorne was mentioned. The Martells had not forgotten or forgiven the murder of Elia and her children, crimes tied inseparably to the Lannisters and even to Robert's rebellion. Ned was unsure how Dorne might tilt, but he sensed that the Martells relished the idea of a reckoning in King's Landing.